Great. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement. Board pals, I cannot recall who said they wanted to do that. Nathania, I think.
That would be me.
Oh, Jackie. Perfect. Thank you, Jackie.
Fantastic. All right. Mute it. Yeah, there we go. So before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the lands on which we meet. I'm joining you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the shared traditional territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Coquitlam First Nations. I encourage you all to pause and reflect on the lands from which you join us tonight, and please, if you know, enter into the chat what traditional lands you're currently on. So as the pandemic has once again opened our annual meeting to a virtual space, we have the freedom to tune in from all over this country we call Canada or America or wherever you may be joining us from today. We're very thankful for the privilege to live, meet, and very soon, hopefully, learn and train together in so many places across this land. There is much to be said about the need for reconciliation, the need to examine the systemic failures that led to the suffering and, in too many cases, death of these land's first peoples. It's not just our history, it is our present, and there is much work to be done to better the future. I urge everyone to continue to do the work, elevate Indigenous voices, and keep learning about this country's truths and the many who had their livelihoods stolen so that we may have ours. I'm sharing a link in the chat to a trusted organization that is accepting donations to support residential school survivors. And if you can donate, I encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Wonderful. So we will begin our AGM now. We're officially called to order. We're going to start by approving last year's minutes. Just as a reminder, if you were not present at last year's AGM, you are not eligible to vote on those minutes because I feel like the answer to that is obvious. I was given one amendment already. I misspelled a couple of people's names last year. So in section 7 of the minutes, I will be amending Larissa's last name with a proper spelling and Nathania's last name with a proper spelling as well. Thank you, Louisa, for catching those. Does anyone else that was present last year have any amendments they would like to let me know about? Feel free to turn your mic on and let me know or pop it in the chat, as there are many of you for me to try to look at. Great. Chris, do we know who that was here this year was here last year?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Just trying to decide how we're going to do this vote appropriately.
Shall we?
Top of the minute, I thought.
Yes, but that would require us to cross-reference all of the names from last year to the names from this year.
If it helps, I know I was here last year.
Thanks, Eric. I'm just gonna choose to have faith that you're all honest people. If you were here last year, we are free to vote. We do need someone to motion for that approval.
I'll motion Brianna John Knight.
Perfect, thank you. And someone to second it?
Seconded?
Was that Chris Mott?
Yes, it was. Sorry, Chris.
That's okay, thank you. And anyone that was here last year, you can either use your hand or you can also use your little hand emoji if you would like to say whether or not you are in favor of approving those minutes.
Larissa Yanchak in favor.
Thank you, Larissa. Great. Last year's minutes are approved. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. We're going to jump forward now to our president's report. So I will pass things over to Nathania.
Thank you so much, Brianna. I just wanted to say thank you and welcome to all of you who have come today to sit with us and recount what we've done through this year. I'm really excited to see all the faces because we have people like JP Fournier who are like corner and pillar stones of this organization. We have our board who has been working throughout this year tirelessly on different initiatives. And also just what I love about this organization is the ability to meet and work with people from all over Canada and sometimes the world. I know that Paul was able to create the world, so we were able to connect with actor combatants from all over. So I am so happy to have you all here today. This is the reason why I continue to do the work, is to connect, and also the insurmountable lessons that I learned as myself as an artist through this. But yeah, as the pandemic gave us room to breathe, I wanted to focus on learning about how to build initiatives and strengthen our policies and procedures to help answer our need to diversify and to become a truly inclusive space. But what does that look like? It means meeting people within their current experience and addressing their needs within our spaces, conflict and resolution reporting, artist resources and handbooks before certifications and apprenticing, meeting access needs, and developing grants for the development of underrepresented artists. These are just a few. It doesn't address how far we still need to go. This year has been tough because I feel like it's been a really big uphill battle trying to make these changes or trying to find ways to answer something that is very hard to answer. We were able to act and implement a few initiatives that will be addressed in new and old business. These policies and initiatives have taken a lot of time, resources, research, and emotional energy. And I am thankful for the allyship and those that have continued to do the work with us and on their own. It is with a heavy heart that the board will say goodbye to Louisa as our Director of Training. Yeah. There are no words that can explain how much time and emotional labor that Louisa has put into her term, and I am extremely sad to see her go. For someone walking into my first basic and being able to see someone represented was huge for me. And we know that is a huge responsibility. So especially after the in-depth examination of curriculum and its effect on diversity and inclusion, I just wanted to say thank you for your time, Louisa. We've talked, and I want you to know that I have found everything you have done so invaluable. But as we move forward, I'm excited to see who will join the board and be the new person to collaborate with us in a role that I know is quite a big one, a big role to fill. And we'll talk about that later. I'm excited to look into the future. And I celebrate all those who have personally reached out and brought forward ideas. Janine Waddell-Hodar for expressing interest in strengthening FDC's relationship with academia. Janine has personally reached out to me about just her relationship and how she wants to move forward within the organization. Kirsten and Daniel, who continually work towards inclusivity for the WIT and have shared those resources and ideas with me, which is huge because this can feel like a very lonely road. Yes, Rachel Flesher for the consulting that we did earlier on with Town Hall, Rico Pfeiffer for creating a platform for online community content. That was something that he took and has also worked closely with some curriculum stuff as well. And I am so happy and grateful for the time that they have committed. Siobhan Richardson, thank you for creating proposals on connecting us with the intimacy world and respectful workplace offerings. And my board of directors and executive have put their time into their own initiatives. I know that we are being pulled in so many different directions, but I'm so grateful for your time and effort. And I am also very happy to welcome back Brianna, who is taking another term as secretary and has been an incredible asset to the board. Makes me look like I know what I'm doing. With the hopes of holding a national workshop in 2022, my request as we move forward is encouraging more membership participation. If we are going to try and make change, we also need to hear about your voices and experiences. And that is everyone. That is our College of Fight Masters. That is our newest members. They're members that are well into their apprenticeship, our FIs, our FDs. We really need to hear because everybody has landed in a different place. I have been lucky enough to have really enjoyed my education with FDC. I just know that isn't the case for everyone. So let's talk about this. Let's find where our shortcomings are and where we can meet everybody at a place, because I know that I've had great memories, and yeah, I've had a great experience with this. I just know that that isn't the same for everyone. So as we move into my second year, I am hopeful that I will see the return of our training opportunities. I'm really looking forward to working with the National Workshop in 2022, hopefully with Mike Kovac at the forefront of that. Again, he has done so much groundwork, and we are so lucky to have him out in Vancouver. But there is a significant amount of things that we can do better personally as membership and within the spaces we occupy. But I know that we are all looking to do better. So I'm excited for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathania. We're gonna move forward now for our treasurer's report from Mr. John Knight.
Thank you, Brianna. I'm going to try to share my screen here so I can share a brief snapshot of our financials for everybody. Can people see that? Super. Okay. So the past 12 months have been a period of relative fiscal inactivity for FDC. Due to the COVID-19 health restrictions, we were unable to run any of our planned 2020 nationals or any other events to date in 2021. As a result, we have no revenue coming in from training events. Similarly, FDC instructors have been mostly unable to offer any training due to local restrictions, meaning we have not received the membership revenue we would have in a normal year. Our financial statement for the past 12 months reflects this overall lack of income. You can see brought in $780.37 these last 12 months. So with this lack of income in mind, my primary focus over this term has been avoiding expenditure to ensure that FDC reserves sufficient capital to smoothly get our next training events up and running. Our director of training and membership administrator both voluntarily took hiatuses to receive their honorariums, which helped quite a bit in keeping our expenses down. Therefore, our only major expenses other than bank fees, which we incurred, were costs associated with our FDC town hall and the consultation fee associated with our policy and procedure review. These were both deemed to be reasonable expenses to help ensure the future health of our organization by ensuring we lay the groundwork for greater inclusivity. So you can see there that our total expenses then were $3,645.90. Saying then that our overall expenses were greater than our income. However, with a little over $9,000 remaining in our bank account, we are in good position for covering the startup costs for our next training event. It should be noted that of those, a little less than $3,000 is nationals deposits that were left with us when we had to cancel our 2020 nationals. In addition to this, it's still unknown what, if any, taxes may be required to pay any CRA taxes. I'll talk about that in more detail when we get to old business about the CRA. But it should also be noted that we will have to pay our accountant his fee upon completion of the filing. Very reasonable fee. I can't remember the exact number, but it's, $500, $700, something like that. So overall, this has been a quiet period for the financial side of our organization. That being said, I'm confident that despite the challenges that we've faced associated with COVID-19, we are coming out of the other side of this pandemic, hopefully, in good financial health. That's kind of it for my report.
Thanks, John. We will continue moving forward. Louisa is going to give her Director of Training report.
Hi, everyone. I'm on a new device, so if you can't hear me, just let me know. So as most of you already know, there were no in-person events organized by AFDC this year due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic situation. And while this was unfortunate for us from a training perspective, it did give us the chance to work on other important initiatives, some of which Nathania has already commented on, to improve our academic branch for future years. So 2 changes were made that affect the training arm of FTC in the past year. These changes were already in the beginning stages around this time last year, and then further prioritized after receiving more communication and feedback from our membership. And this is both independently through reach outs and through the town hall that was in September. So in the fall, the board approved a proposal I put forward to add mental health first aid to the list of instructor requirements. This was something that had been discussed previously and then was also brought forward as a suggestion by Faye Moores at the town hall. What this means is that instructor apprentices will need to show proof of mental health first aid training or equivalent before attempting their instructor certification. And then for existing instructors and fight masters, it's not immediate, but they will need to provide the same when they renew their membership. So there is some time and grace period for that. But we believe that that was an important thing to consider, just like we ask all our instructors have first aid as well. Because we understand that a lot of challenges can arise in the room. And while this isn't everything, it's just another step to make sure that our instructors are a little more prepared. So the second change is a series of adjustments to the overall AFTC curriculum that has been part of our anti-racism initiatives, and also an opportunity to have our curriculum more accurately reflect the needs of our students and the standards of the industry today. And this change was brought about by a collective really of labor and input from many of our senior members. And we'll discuss that more in detail during the new business portion of today's meeting. And then as Nathania mentioned, the board's current plan for next year is to try and hold a full-scale nationals in the summer of 2022, provided it is safe to do so. And that's all from me. Thanks.
Lisa. I saw a question in the chat. I will keep tabs on questions if you put them in there as we go, but I will hold questions until we get to the questions portion of the afternoon, except for Chris was so on it that he already answered that question because he's the best.
Sorry, communications is my thing.
That's okay. I'm never sad that you've answered questions, Chris. Speaking of Chris, would you like to give a Director of Administration report?
Oh yeah, that's me next. Yeah, just let me bring up my thing here. All right. So unsurprisingly, there's not a whole lot to report administratively this year. We have had no classes, so there have been no certifications and no recertifications. Although we have had in the last few weeks a few new members registering, hopefully in anticipation of classes starting again, which is very exciting. So normally a year without certifications would mean a significant drop in membership as people expire, but as all of you hopefully know, the board moved and passed a blanket extension last year. So everybody's membership and certification were extended either by 1 calendar year or to the end of September of this year, 2021, whichever was later. So basically people who were due to expire last summer have until the end of September, and anybody who was due to expire September last year or later gets bumped a year, and that includes membership fees. What that means is hopefully at the end of September, assuming classes are running again, we will be back to our more or less normal cycle of certifications and recertifications. The focus this year has been, my focus at least, has been twofold. Maintenance, so that we can get back up and rolling right away when the time comes to do so. That includes some streamlining efforts, redoing our mailing list system, which I'm sure means nothing to anyone but me and whoever comes after me, but that's a nice thing on my end. And also structural changes to the organization, as others have talked about. So things that were on the radar last year, like adding new features and filling out sections in the website, those have just been backburnered in favor of more important work this year. As a member of the executive, my role is primarily one of implementation rather than setting policy. I'm not a board member. I don't have a vote. I do the things. This year, I have been asked to attend regular board meetings so that they have some insight into operations. And as you know, there's been a huge, massive overhaul to the P&P, which is still ongoing. My part of that effort has been to make it clearer, more sensibly organized, easier to use than it has been before. The P&P is a living document and changes fairly regularly. There's usually a couple of tweaks a year. And as a result, it becomes kind of a Frankenstein's monster. Hopefully, in addition to the important work of making FDCA a safer and more welcoming and more accountable and more representative organization, the recent updates can help hide some of the stitches in that document and make it more user-friendly for all of us, since they are the rules we work by. Yeah, that's all I have to say. That's how I spent my year.
Thanks, Chris. Amazing. Now we're going to go to Tammy for the Fight Instructor Representative Report.
Hi. Okay, I thought a lot of this would be covered in new business, so it's likely that I'll be mostly referring to things we'll be talking about later. But yes, so for the last year, the board has been working very hard on the procedures, policies and procedures, with some exceptional work on sourcing people from Michelle, who I'm sure will be chatting about that later, and some amazing work throughout the board about trying to put things together and make sure things are approved. We've been working on the curriculum with Louisa, which has been Herculean effort on her part to bring this forward, and it's going to be amazing. You'll hear about it. It's fantastic. Aside from that, I've been working on trying to create an onboarding process for the apprentices and for instructors. And what you'll find is that with the policies and procedures becoming more clear, I think apprentices and instructors are going to, and instructors to be, will have a much easier time understanding the requirements leading into that. FDs, people who wish to become fight directors, should have a much easier time understanding the requirements there as well. And a lot of these things should be streamlined, but we'd still like to have literature available to both apprentices and to fight instructors, helping navigate as many things as we can, anything from how do we approach educational institutions and other theater companies, to how do we work alongside our apprentices or instructors, etc. And I sent out a survey last year that a few people were kind enough to answer, and also got some really great feedback from some of the instructors about other organizations and their literature. But I would love to put it forward to everyone, instructor, apprentice, or someone who's hoping to become an apprentice alike. What are the things you have felt, because we've heard this before, I wish they had something written down about that. I wish they had a pamphlet on this. I wish they had a book on that. I wish they had some sort of information on this aspect of what it is I'm doing, because that will give me a better sense of just how large or small, how encompassing is this thing, because at the moment it's turning into a novel. It's probably not what it needs to be. So let's, if I can get some input from anyone who's interested, it's FIREP, FIREP @fdc.ca. Please drop me a line with any questions, comments, concerns. Oh, thanks. And yeah, and Chris already did it. Thank you. Aside from that, one of the other things we'll be talking about in the future is simply looking at what is the role of the board and what is the role of a director of the academy. And we sort of looked at different positions and requirements, and it's a process. So we'll be discussing that later. I'm sure Nathaniel will have a lot to say about that, and Luis as well. And that's all I have to say. This is rambling. Have a good time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. Amazing. So that is it for our reports. We're going to move forward into old business. So we're going to start with the website. Nathania, if you'd like to talk about that.
So after Patrick's term, there was a lot of focus on trying to rebuild the website as a platform to connect the artists with opportunities from the outside, but also a way to highlight and highlight and what's the word? Anyways, that to your profiles. What is it called? Extended profiles. Yes. So there was just different ways to. Oh my gosh, my words. Yeah, there is just ways to. Add more to your profile and be able to share your level, your websites, everything that has to deal with kind of you as an artist, not only as a stage combat actor combatant, but also like what else you do. Because I know everybody has a lot that they do. Like everybody in this room right now has many different roles. Again, as we move forward, that will be something that I'll be working with Chris. But again, Chris and I cannot do anything unless we actually have membership participation. And that's going to be kind of the theme of a lot of the things that we'll be asking is like, if you, especially we wanted to do a lot of like highlighting new artists and like being able to be like, okay, we want to actually spotlight these artists. It can be anybody from FIs, FDs, people who are just doing certs. Like if you had a actor combatant that you were like, oh, I met this person, they're from, they're from Chicago, or, I met someone that was from Saskatoon. I thought they were really cool. Send them to us, and then we can reach out to them and be able to ask them for all their details, and then we'll actually start to be able to roll a lot of these things that we want to do with the website. But again, we did take a step back because the PNP took up a lot of our time. We did a lot of combing and mining through it all, so the website took a bit of a step back. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Nathania, our next old business is the CRA reporting. John?
Yeah, thanks, Brianna. So those of you who were here at last year's AGM may remember that there was an outstanding question as to whether or not Fight Directors Canada would owe any taxes, specifically from our revenue from the Worlds.
Sorry, John, you're very, very quiet. Is there anything you can do for that we could hear you a little better?
Hard, maybe.
Oh, that's better already.
Okay, a little bit. Great. So let me, I'll start over there. So those of you who were present at last year's AGM may recall that there was an ongoing question as to whether or not we would owe any CRA taxes as a result of our past activities, especially a question around Worlds, because that particular event had more attendance, therefore more money involved than any of our other events have. It's been a bit of a process getting that question answered, and it's still a bit of a question mark. We've had to register for a business number with Canada Revenue Agency. We had to then set a fiscal year end because Canada Revenue Agency didn't have any of that kind of information for us. And then we had to get directors registered with the Canada Revenue Agency and all that sort of thing. That's all done now. And so now our accountant does have the authorization to file on our behalf, and that's in the process of happening. So I do not have a direct answer for where we lie on that now, but I should soon.
Thanks, John. Next, we're going to talk about COVID. Chris, you briefly talked about it in your report, but if you and Nathania together kind of want to just let people know where we're at.
I think I explained what I know about it. We're hoping classes start again soon so that we have some training opportunities and we have some money.
Yeah, absolutely. And what Chris was saying, how we extended memberships as well, to alleviate the fact that we had no training ongoing during COVID-19. So if you have any questions about that, especially if you are planning to go to nationals, please message Chris.
Well, okay, next we're going to talk about our anti-racism and anti-oppression initiatives. Michelle.
I'm gonna warn you all that there's some washing going on and the machine is as old as the house I live in, so that you might hear that, believe it or not. So sorry. So yes, the major thing we committed to last year, there it is. If you heard that, I apologize. Major thing we committed to last year was finding an outside consultant due to the fact that we felt just people within FDC looking at the PNP would leave some glaring blind spots. It probably has in the past, and that's something we wanted to address. So we did go out, we talked to a lot of companies. There's a lot of them out there, more all the time now, of course, as demand goes up. But the company we settled on is Bacao Consulting. It was formerly known as Cecily Blaine, so some of you may have heard of it under that name. They were very busy this year, so other companies have been using them too. Louisa and I sat down and met with their representative, and based on what we felt our needs were, and based on that representative reading through basically our whole website, which was very impressive to me, we settled on hiring them to do a thorough review of our policies and procedures. So if you go and look at the changes that have been made this year, a huge chunk of that is thanks to the consulting work that was done for us. Some examples of what we found, just outdated or confusing language, unclear procedures or requirements. Quite often, personally, the changes I noticed where it made it sound a heck of a lot harder to accomplish certain things. Certain procedures sounded far more complicated and demanding than they are. So a lot of that has been cleaned up, which is really, really lovely. We also, through this process, learned a lot about what the barriers within our organization are. Richard, stop laughing at my washing machine. God damn it. We've learned a lot from the experience, even if we hadn't been provided direct feedback from our representative, just the differences that there are between what we had and what we have now, I think will inform a lot of future initiatives. And I'm very excited about everything we've learned and everything we're going to do next. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Sorry, I sometimes just have to finish typing my sentence before I can unmute myself. Wonderful. We are going to move forward now into new business. So we're going to start by talking about the Director of Training position, Nathania.
I do believe that was Tammy.
Sure, Tammy.
Gotcha. Okay. So, sorry about that. Mute. So we looked into, here's the thing. Luisa's role was huge. And as soon as we started looking into the parts of it, it looked a little overwhelming. And I'm impressed that anyone was able to do this role for 4 years. And I'm continuously in awe of Luisa and what she's able to do, but it's a lot to ask of anyone, in particular because we don't have the funds to pay what a director of the academy would typically cost. So we are in the process of looking at the different positions as a whole.
I know Tammy's internet sometimes cuts in and out, so I don't know if anyone else can jump in on this.
So we have also decided to look at maybe breaking up this this role. Again, before Louisa, Paul did all of this. And it's just really interesting to see how much is in both in this role. So we were looking at possibly doing a director of training still, but then also maybe a director of programming. So we have not filled this role yet, just because we want to look at the structure of it first before we put a call out for this role. So we are still looking at it. It's not being pushed to the wayside. It's just we want to really look at it structured and be able to know what we can actually put forward.
Can you explain what the director of programming is doing versus training? Thank you.
Yes, it's still a working in progress, but
Largely, the idea is that the difference is the director of training will continue to look at the academy and curriculum and things like that. And the director of programming will take things like coordinating and overseeing the nationals off of their plate so that they have more time and more space to focus on the direction of the organization without some of the larger event coordinating responsibilities.
yeah, and that includes the FDC next.
Mhm.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. We are in the country and the internet is awful. Sorry about that.
We got you covered, Tammy.
Thank you.
Okay. I did see a couple little hand emojis, but in general, we're going to try to hold questions just so that we don't get too sidetracked as our things and we don't end up covering things multiple times, ideally. With that in mind, we're going to talk about our wonderful curriculum changes. Louisa.
Okay, strap in. So these curriculum changes started last year with talks I had with past President Patrick Howarth after our last AGM, well, actually right before our last AGM, and then expanded to more conversations I was having with Fight Instructor Representative Tammy Everett and Fight Master Casey Hudecki. So the purpose of the updating the curriculum was to expand the scope of what can be taught within each discipline. It also balances out our students' skill sets as they move from basic all the way to advanced. And the primary goals of this curriculum are to allow for more cultural diversity and to reflect current practices in the performing arts industry more accurately, while maintaining the integrity of our academic standards and values, which have been really solid and are the product of a lot of hard work from many, many years from our Fight Masters and many of our senior members. So a lot of this, from those initial talks last year, we kind of let that percolate and then took in more feedback and from members and such. And then some months ago, I really started working on this proposal in earnest, and I met and consulted with a large number of senior members of FDC. So in a lot of the ways, what was great was this really came from like a collective community effort, which I'm really proud of. So I'll just quickly credit some of the contributors here. Other people, other than those that I mentioned, who offered their very valuable contributions on this project include Rachel Flesher, Jacqueline Holloway, Siobhan Richardson, Kevin Robinson, and we had many instructors that I talked to as well who offered their support on this document: Brianna Johnston, John Knight, Christopher Mott, Nate Bitton, Richard Como, Eric Fournier, Mike Kovac, Jeffrey Olenek, and Rico Pfeiffer. So again, in a lot of ways, this is a collective effort. The proposed curriculum changes were brought forward to the College of Fight Masters for voting on June 28th. And then there was a lot of really thoughtful discussion that took place amongst the Fight Masters, and then also some very helpful additional amendments to the proposed changes that they offered. A small one from Single Sword from Todd Campbell, and also one to what will now be known as Sword and Companion from Ian Rose, but there were kind of a lot of group contributions throughout those discussions as well. So a big thank you to the College of Fight Masters too. In just a moment, I will have Chris pull up the summary so that we can go over in a bit more detail. But just kind of like as a blanket, the curriculum has kind of expanded on the possibilities, but does not require instructors, with the exception of one discipline, to really alter what or how they have been teaching up to this point. Mostly what it does is provide new options for how to approach our core concepts while keeping our core values the same. And it kind of keeps us in line with FDC's methodology of imparting biomechanical concepts that will help our actor combatants be able to take on any choreography style and movements, rather than focusing on teaching individual weapon techniques and that specific proficiency. Great, Chris, can I get you to share that document for me? Thank you so much. Okay, so Chris, are you cool if I just like tell you when to scroll? Can't see everyone, so.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I was
Amazing.
giving the thumbs up, but couldn't find the unmute button there.
No worries. Okay, so in BASIC, there's no real functional change to BASIC. We changed quarterstaff to the name staff to make it more universal, which in truth, it kind of keeps us in line with things that we were already doing. We were already seeing a lot of staff influence from a multitude of different cultural styles and things like that. So it just really more accurately reflects what was already happening. And then, as I mentioned, Todd added a helpful clarification for single sword in terms of the criteria of what kind of weapons we should be using. There's kind of an industry standard, and this just makes it clear in our PMP and our syllabus when people read that. If we can move on to the next page, Chris. Great. In intermediate, here's where you start to see changes. You'll notice that the one that we did not change was small sword. And while this is a single weapon discipline, a lot of us recognized that small sword has been very useful for a lot of us in terms of assessing technique because of the form that it takes. If there are footwork issues, that can often be seen through small sword. If there are point work issues, it can often be seen through small sword. There may be some more ongoing discussion with that, which is great because as people have mentioned before, just like our policies and procedures, as a growing and current organization, we always want to be kind of reassessing what we're doing and whether that is serving us and our students and the organization. Broadsword is being changed to two-handed sword. This is going to clarify certain things. Broadsword to begin with can refer to a number of different swords, including single-handed ones. And two-handed sword is really a direct progression from quarterstaff. So we want to make that clarification, but this opens it up from just being what has traditionally been longsword into a multitude of other possibilities that come from other cultures that share very, very similar forms of movement expression. So when on your own time, you can kind of take a look at the weapon possibilities that are listed. And those are just ones that we on this document could kind of come up with, but for sure, there are also others that I am not aware of that are possible there as well. On our martial arts isn't really a large functional change. It's kind of what we've already been doing, but we've officially removed the requirement for the test fight to be stylized as an Eastern martial arts. And so people can use any on our martial arts in, style as inspiration for choreography, which again was already happening. And then we're just emphasizing that the focus in this discipline is on trained and skilled fighters rather than in basic unarmed, which is on untrained and unskilled. And finally, for our last discipline in intermediate, rapier and dagger is going to become sword and companion. You'll notice that in both two-handed sword and in rapier and dagger, you can still teach longsword and you can still teach rapier and dagger in sword and companion as well. It just opens up the breadth of possibilities culturally and also just in terms of individual interest. So sword and companion is any dual wielded weapon system consisting of a sword in one hand and a smaller companion weapon in the other. Chris, can we move us along to the next page? Thank you so much. So in advanced, the one that we haven't changed is found in environmental weapons because we found that to be quite universal and conceptual already. Advanced small sword is becoming advanced point work because we do agree that it's great for advanced combatants to be able to have another stab, pun not intended, at fine point work and proportion, but we don't want to limit them to having to do small sword when there are many other styles that are out there to explore as well. So that is any point-based / primarily thrusting weapon or weapon style that is operated with one hand. This discipline will focus on the advanced application of time, distance, proportion, and footwork as it relates to point work. Broadsword and companion is being changed to weapon and shield. And again, this kind of keeps in line with what was already happening, which is mostly that people were teaching sword and shield, and we do think that shield is an important component for people to come into contact with. And again, this just opens up the possibilities rather than it just being a sword. We're already seeing people start to do things with spear and shield, and this is just kind of making that official and also allowing other possibilities in there, such as Makohedal and shield, Zulu stick and shield, things that I'm really excited to potentially see in the future. The two biggest set of changes, I don't know, Chris, if you can kind of scroll down between these two pages. Amazing, thank you so much. Are to rapier and companion to stage martial arts weapons. And this is kind of like a set of changes that goes hand in hand with each other. Rapier and companion is being switched into complex weapons, and complex weapons really is an amalgamation of rapier and companion and what used to be stage martial arts, which really gave our students access to different shapes than what they had already been used to. So for complex weapons of any origin may be taught in this discipline, provided they are different in shape or movement to weapons explored in previous levels. Another thing that was added is a flexible weapon must be taught for at least a portion of the course, but use of the flexible weapon in the test fight is optional. And this was added because some of our instructors commented how they had gone through their entire FTC training and had actually never come into contact with a flexible weapon, and that was quite important for them. And I think we all agreed that that was very useful for kind of a full balanced skill set. So that's why that's been added in there. Yeah. And then advanced martial concepts was really us finding a room to bring a through line of unarmed from basic all the way to advanced, because we kind of come across people in other industries, and sometimes there were comments that, you know, FTC folks in general were very, very, very proficient at sword work, and sometimes less so in the unarmed martial arts portion, which is very, very prevalent in our industry nowadays, whether it be in film or even in stage Shakespeare, which is swapping out a lot of kind of period settings for modern settings sometimes, and also for budgetary reasons, switching perhaps swords to knives and things like that. So we really want to make sure we have a beautiful through line of like single sword to small sword to now advanced point work. And we really want to make sure that our students have a balanced skill set from basic unarmed combat to intermediate martial arts, and to get another crack at that in advance to really fine tune their skills rather than just get the gross movement. So this discipline will focus on the advanced application of time, distance, proportion, and footwork as it relates to unarmed martial arts. Focus will also be given towards advanced applications of weight sharing, tighter cueing, and closer distance combat. Use of a small single-handed weapon, for example, knife, short stick, or spike, is allowed. And then we're really excited about this as well. The opportunity is also available, but not required, to introduce students to transitioning techniques from stage to other mediums, such as film or motion capture, which I think is, again, really important for our growth as an industry, because I really think our students come out with so many wonderful skills, and to really set them up for the most success when the opportunity is available for us to show them how they can take that skill set and slightly modify it to start to enter into other industries as well, will be really beneficial to them. Great. Chris, if you can move us along to the bottom. So while there are a lot of expansions and changes, as we mentioned before, instructors do not have to go and suddenly learn a bunch of new weapons. If you want to teach the same things you've been teaching, which have been working super well for us so far, absolutely, you can still do that. So on your own time, you can take a look at this table. On one side, it illustrates how you could teach the same stuff that you have been teaching to format your basic, intermediate, and advanced courses. And then the right side of the chart just offers some other options. And in putting this curriculum through, I think we understood that there probably will be some time before we really see a lot of these changes in practice, because, you know, most of us have been focusing on is things like longsword and rapier and dagger and small sword, things that we were introduced to and that were required in the syllabus. So it's going to take some time for our instructors to really have fun exploring other things that they're interested in, and then to really feel confident that they can impart still the core movement concepts that we're requiring to their students. But that's why we thought it was important to institute these changes now so that we can potentially see the changes really in practice in future years. And then just at the glossary section here, to avoid students being inundated and having to memorize like 1,800 different weapons, we're still going to keep the core parts of the FDC glossary that have been painstakingly put together by everyone that has contributed to it so far. And then if you were going to bring in a new weapon into your classroom, you could offer your students a supplementary glossary, which would be approved beforehand by the course coordinator and adjudicating FM. And that way the students would know exactly what they need to study. And then this is also an opportunity for us to be able to share knowledge within the community. And if an instructor wanted to offer their research and their supplementary glossary up to the community, there would be a shared glossary section on the members only section of the website. Thanks, Chris. You can take down that screen share. With that, one more change that happened this past Wednesday at the board meeting is I proposed an addition to the PMP, which was passed by the board. And it reads, in the third year of a president's term, the board may establish a committee to review the AFDC curriculum and syllabus to identify any issues and recommendations for the College of Fight Masters to discuss that may be then amended in the policies and procedures. And of course, updates to the curriculum can happen at any time, but this is just to solidify kind of in our policies that we should always have kind of an active eye on what we are doing. And it kind of allows people the opportunity to go, oh, right, is there anything we want to change, so that future changes maybe won't be on such a colossal scale and can be bit by bit as the need kind of comes up year to year. Thanks, I know that was a lot.
Thanks, Louisa. Our next item of new business is our welcome packets and student onboarding, which Tammy touched on a little bit in her report. But Tammy and Michelle, if the two of you would like to talk a little bit more about that.
I will go ahead and go first, and if you want to tag on whatever else. Tammy mentioned it a little bit already. The member guide and the FI guide were meant to be quite similar originally. The member guide has slightly evolved since we first started talking about it, because I will now be writing a member guide as well as developing an onboarding process. What we think that'll look like is both a welcome packet and like, I don't know how to describe it. Just like, hey, this is your representative who can advocate for you or help you find stuff if you just can't find stuff, right? We want to send an email like that with just all the information they'll need to feel like they're part of the organization from the beginning. I know lots of people have told me that they had no idea where the policies and procedures were, stuff like that, right? Because they didn't ask, because they didn't know it existed. Yeah, it can leave you feeling like, okay, I did a workshop, now what? Whereas what we really want is that increased member involvement. So the idea is now to have two things, I guess. This process of onboarding that includes a nice little welcome package and also a member guide that anyone can refer to if they're in that moment where they're like, do I have to read the whole website to figure out what I need? Well, no, because I have this slightly shorter guide that will point me in the right direction from the right track. So far, I mean, where am I with that? I have an outline, which is too messy to show you. I'm so sorry. And I also sent out a survey, which a few more people were generous enough to respond to. But if you have opinions, please tell me, so that it's not just me swimming in my notes. Chris, would you do the same for me and put my email in the chat? Thank you so much. And as always, message me with anything else that you think I should be doing. Siobhan, I'll see if I can do that, if I can regenerate that survey. If not, I'll be sure and send you the questions that were in there, if nothing else. Thanks.
I don't know if I have anything to add because I was chatting beforehand. So it's really just that our things have become a little more divergent from each other. So mine has gone in the other direction, and I'm thinking that what's going to happen is you're going to have a very short that's distracting me. A very short hello and welcome thing that'll let you know what is going to be covered, but I'd like to have something in way more detail so that people who are, for example, trying to approach different organizations, I'm just going to shut this down. I didn't trust the internet not to go down again, and so I have it playing from 2 different locations. I'm sorry. It'll be in larger detail and some examples, I'm hoping. So if anyone has resources as well that they've done, if you've sent a pamphlet, which I'll be using one that I had sent to universities or to schools, or if anybody has contracts that they'd like to use as an example for people to use when someone is borrowing their weapons, or it's bringing them on as an FD or an instructor into another organization. It'll have information on insurance, which is something you should probably have, but a lot of us don't because we don't necessarily understand what our responsibility is when we're going into another institution and doing, say, a workshop there. So it will have a lot of information, and it's going to be longer than I originally anticipated, which is why it's taking longer to do. So if anybody has resources to share, that would be great. Hi, sent to everyone FMs, for example. I sent the instructor and assistant one to the FIs and the assistants. Unfortunately, I did not send it to the FMs. I can certainly send you a copy, but the FMs are in like a different list of people who are higher. And so I don't have that list. So I'll send it to you, Casey, for sure. I'm so sorry.
Also, I'd like to encourage for these onboarding processes is if people can send like range of motion exercises, daily exercises, because sometimes, especially for basic, we might be getting people in who have never done any kind of movement before. So I think it would be awesome. I know this is asking for work, but just like with Rico, with his community content, if people are willing to be like, hey, I'm going to take you through like this 10-minute workout, it would be awesome to share and be like, yeah, this is one of our, apprentices from Toronto or from Calgary. And, if you ever go out there, you can meet them. Like, I just want to find different ways to connect to everybody. So just thoughts like that.
Lovely. Thanks, everybody. Our next piece of new business, John, I'm going to come back to you, is our YouTube content.
Yeah, that's actually a nice transfer from Nathania. So Nathania's mentioned a couple of times. So FI Rico Pfeiffer has been heading up a community-generated content for social media, which is primarily focusing on YouTube right now. What that consists of is FDC members are encouraged to get in touch with Rico and commit to doing, I believe it's 6 to 12 videos. I can't remember the exact number, but a number of videos on a topic of their choice. And then those get posted to FDC's YouTube channel. It's a way to showcase our membership as well as continually raising awareness of both FDC and the membership who choose to do the videos. And then this is open to everyone as well, not just FIs and FDs and FMs, but anybody from your basic to all the way up to advanced combatants as well. As I say, Rico's got a really good welcome package and a good system there. This came out of, weirdly enough, came out of our fundraising committee. But we realized we need to get the word out about FDC. Yes, Casey, we probably should connect those. And I'll have a meeting with Rico soon, and we'll talk about forward planning on how this continues to develop. So yeah, so right now it's happening, and we hope to be making it bigger and involve as many people as possible.
Thanks, John. Next up in our new business, Nathania, I'm going to come back to you to talk about our ethics committee.
Great. So we held a town hall in the early part of our year. And the goal for that was to create a draft of the code of ethics and core values and created by a committee of people within our organization. Through the town hall, we wanted to hear the process on how we can serve our membership better, discuss things we'd like to see in a new code of conduct, an overarching statement for FDC regardless of level, and hopefully build on expectations. As a teacher, my promise is this. As a student, my promise is this. So that was a big ask. And as a board of directors, you're like, well, how can we actually get our voices heard? So we were hoping to build a committee. There are some people that did get together to discuss what this committee might be. We called it an ethics committee possibly. But when they came together, they're still discussing what they are. And again, when we talked about a loose structure, there was some things that the committee came back to us with about how they should build it. And there was also a few roles that we were looking for, especially an outside artist that was not from FDC to be able to overlook this committee, but someone who was hopefully knew about our organization. So Richard Lee, who is also a fight director, was a name that we passed around, but that's the person that we're looking for as an outside committee member. And through this committee, we were again looking to build the code of conduct, create structures of reporting, of like mandatory reporting versus non-mandatory reporting, figuring out written complaints versus verbal, how they're reported and where do they go. And creating this as a strong, transparent reporting system. This is one of the biggest things in our PMP that is still not structured well. And then figuring out disciplinary actions and rehabilitation, relationship repair. So again, we are still looking on how we can create this and build this, because I think this would be something that would be good to roll out before we do our nationals. But again, this is, I will have to go back to the committee and see where they're at.
Thanks, Nathania. The next item on our agenda, as was mentioned earlier, is the results of the secretary election. Hi, as you may have guessed, it's still me. So I was the only nominee, so I have been re-elected to the position by acclamation. The next item on our agenda, which is a very last minute addition, we unfortunately didn't put this out to you ahead of time as it was a very last minute thing. We actually approved it this afternoon. So Nathania, if you could talk about our new grants.
Yes, this grant would have not been possible without the allyship I was talking about. It's been a long road trying to figure out the answers. Again, there's a lot of structures in place right now that are trying to our inclusivity and diversity problems. And there's still a lot of things that are working and there's still things that are not. One of the things that I've noticed is just the representation between, within our membership, and that we are extremely lacking in just just even within this room right now, as you can tell. So it's been tough, especially when we look at what we need to do, what kind of resources we need to do to actually be able to implement any initiatives. Costs money. And I have been lucky enough to be talking with Kirsten and Daniel just about how they're trying to restructure the WIT. And again, we have talked back and forth about just like the time and the information and the studying that has to go into making any of these initiatives work. And the biggest thing is outcome. And one of the goals for us, hopefully, is how do we get more of that diversity within our rooms? And that has to start with our leadership. And so when I look at our programming, it does take quite a bit of time to become an apprentice into an instructor. As an FD, the same thing. If you see some of our, and as well as some of the other structures that we have in place, including the FMs, we have to look at just those structures in place and how we can access that. Because to actually have someone come up through our ranks, it's going to take 5+ years for even to be in a position of power. And again, a lot of monetary resources. So hopefully, we'll be able to encourage that more. We, Daniel and Kirsten from Rapier Wood are going to graciously donate a FI development grant for people from underrepresented groups, as well as a need grant. So they're gonna offer 6 development grants that are insane. So I don't even know, we're so lucky. Daniel, I don't even know what to say. But so the structure as it would look like, and we're still going to have to discuss a lot of the details, but Rapier Wood is able to commit to donating $3,500 for the first year, so that a FI candidate is able to have $2,500 within their first year to develop and build. And again, there's going to be no timeline to it. So if they take 2 years to kind of like do some of their assisting and hopefully this will offset some of that cost to do so, journeying, going to, say, if they decide to go all the way down to Alberta to work with people, hopefully these costs will offset being able to do a lot of that, do a lot of their, what's it called? What's it called? Thank you. It's, what is it called? So like a list of things that you need to do. Anyway.
Fulfill their requirements.
Thank you. Fulfill the requirements. Thank you. My brain is mush. So yes, to be able to fill the requirements, which is a lot, like to do any like hours outside of journeying there's a lot. And being within the program myself, I know how much time and money that I have used myself just to be able to come out and assist for other places and have done so with a nationals, which has been great. But again, it's like that access and that need is all about what your financial status is. So each FI a candidate will get $2,500 for 2 years. And then that will finish. They're available for 1 grant only, and they're able to apply for it as many times, but they're only allowed to have 1 grant. And as well, Dan and Kirsten are also offering a need grant, which is $1,000 for anyone to be able to put towards their education anywhere. So it can be at a nationals, it can be at a regional or city workshop. And we will figure out what the grant structure will look like, including reporting after and how they can submit. But yeah, this also is tacked on still to the JC and Sandra Levinson Memorial Award. So again, I was just looking at where that's placed. I'm hoping that some of these scholarships and awards will actually be placed in a more public place, so we are able to drive more traffic and interest towards our programming, because it just seems like you have to, it's good to know that we have these programs to aid new people coming in. So yeah, so that's going to be another thing that you will hear about once we figure out all of the structuring for this program. So a huge thank you, Dan and Kirsten. Huge.
Thanks, Nathania, and yes, thank you to Dan and Kirsten for these wonderful new grants. We are done with our new business now. We're going to move into our questions from the floor. So this is the opportunity for anybody for any questions you have about anything we've covered in this meeting or any other things you would like discussed with the board and executive. If we can, I will try to see hands in the chat as you are. I've seen a couple hands go up. Feel free to also just like pop in the chat, just like the word questions, that we can find you, as I am very aware of the possibility of missing just like visual hands. John, is it Nels or Nellis? I'm so sorry. I just saw your hand go up first, so I will.
Hi, can you hear
give the
me?
floor to you. I can.
Yeah, it's Nellis.
Nellis, thank you.
Yes, Nellis. Less is more. I'm happy to see so many new faces that I haven't seen before, and also some old comrades and colleagues from years gone by. So I want to address the questions that were posed to me at the bottom of the first page there, and the other two. For those of you who don't know, I'm a fight director. I have been working at the Directors and Choreographers Committee at ACTRA for about 20 years now. I was there for 15 years, first working to get the fight directors a contract, and then I left, and then the committee was restruck, and I've been back there for a few years. The main emphasis that I've been working on lately there was to focus on making sure that equity was proactive and setting up contracts for intimacy directors to get those in place as intimacy directors came into being, so that they weren't wandering in the vast unknowable regions like fight directors were for decades in trying to get a contract. And Casey was in on this. Siobhan did a huge amount of work, and I'm very happy to say that they have a contract now, right? They got into the CTA, which is a huge stride to get that done that quickly. So I'm really happy to see that, because it gives us jurisdiction. Equity has jurisdiction over that, and it means that they have benefits, and they have protections and things that other members of equity have. We're currently working to get that for dialect coaches, which is something else I do, because right now we aren't covered. So when I dialect coach on a play, even though I'm an equity member, I don't get an equity contract, and I don't get any of the benefits, and I don't get any of that stuff. And it's usually, here's my rate that I want, and they say, no, this is all we have left, right? So that's something we're working on now. So the first question you had, that people had, was, has there been any movement in the last few years about assistant fight director contracts and consideration around these for rehearsal and things like that? So in an indirect way, yes, there has been. So the Directors and Choreographers Committee is also has under its umbrella fight directors. They just didn't put that name in there because it meant bylaw changes to change the committee name, but we are represented in there, and I'm the representative for that. So there's been a lot of discussion from the directors in that committee about how do they handle assistant directors in places like Stratford and other places, bigger companies mainly, and that stuff. And so I've thrown in there, while you're talking about that, we should also consider assistant fight directors. As you know, given what we've gone through in the last year and a half now, almost 2 years, theaters are really struggling financially in many ways. And even when things were good pre-COVID, there was still a lot of question that the theaters looked at assistant directorships very much the way corporations look at internships. You're getting some experience and we're getting free labor. So they're still very much in that mindset. But in terms of assistant fight directors, it's one of those things that at this point they very much consider. I mean, in many cases, getting fight directors, their contracts in various shows, you have to really push to get every cent that you can from production to get an extra rehearsal, to get enough rehearsal time and that stuff. So for the theater to give up more money for fees for an assistant director it's very tough. It's very tough. It's something we're mentioning, we're working on it. And hopefully as they get an assistant director to the director in there, that sets a precedent that we can then use to get assistant fight directors in, right? We had to push for a while just to get fight captains to the point where like people were giving fight captain positions to actors because they felt, well, they could use the extra money, even though they had absolutely no fight training whatsoever. So it was a big push to convince them that that's an important position that needs to be held by somebody who has the extra training to know what that is, right? So, you know, that it's that kind of movement that is happening there. So in terms of the assistant fight director thing, I will keep to bringing it up and keep it on the table there as much as I can. And I'll just let you know as those things progress and move along, okay? The second question was, is it possible to open up the contract at all? I would very much like to know what people mean by open up the contract to help non-equity members as well as members who are working towards their FD certification gain credits. First of all, these contracts took decades to get in place. And I don't know if the word open up is a way of saying, can non-members get an equity contract, right? A non-equity member has no voice whatsoever in equity because they are not a member. In order to be a fight director at equity and on the register, you have to be a member of equity and you have to be a certified fight director from either the Society of Canadian Fight Directors or Fight Directors Canada. Those are the only two organizations which are recognized as having a qualified person to do that job. And that's one reason it is so important to make sure that you keep the standards up of what a fight director means, right? Now, the question there was, well, it says that the theater has the last say on who they hire. That's true. And there is a very good reason for that. The theaters say, first of all, we're paying for all this. And secondly, the reason that that allowance is there is not so they can bring in non-members. The reason is if you are doing a show that, let's say, needs, has a fight with flaming chainsaws, right? That's not something the average fight director learns or is an expert in. Or if you have a show which has a fight that's, let's say, on wires and all that kind of stuff, that exception is there so that the theater can bring in an expert in that specific thing that they need to work with the fight director. They still have to have a fight director in that show to handle all the other fight things that are going on. So they work with that fight director for those specific things. Otherwise, they are obliged to first and foremost take somebody from the registry. The other reason for that is simply liability and insurance, right? So if somebody gets hurt or seriously hurt in a fight, or let's say a sword slides off and hits somebody in the audience in the chest, something like that, and they decide to sue the theater, the first question the lawyer is going to ask is, was the person who did that qualified, right? And if they're not somebody that came off the register who is understood to be a fight director certified person, they're in a lot of trouble, because they're saying you had this thing set up to take those people. So why didn't you take those people? Instead, you brought somebody else in. So in terms of gaining credits, I don't know where it sits right now in terms of what kind of credits somebody needs to become a fight director. But you can't get credits in an equity theater if you're not an equity member and a fight director already. So my advice there would be to talk to FDC or the Academy and say, it's like a catch-22. I can't get those credits I need as a professional if I'm not a fight director and I'm not a member. So you can't do that. So FDC needs to look at their requirements in that.
So I can actually speak to that a little bit because it was one of the policies and procedures changes that we have worked on updating this year. So there has been a change to the fight director requirements to specify hard and soft credits. And there's a lot of details there that I'm not going to.
Hard and soft.
Yes. So there's a lot of details about the numbers of things that you need that I'm not going to get into right now. But in general, it means that things that are hard credits include equity performances that you fight direct. The same as it has been before, non-equity productions that have 10 or more performances, things like that. Soft credits includes things like high school or university shows or fringe productions, things that it's understood there is still a requirement for safety and reliability and repeatableness, but that generally won't have 10 performances and other things like that. So there is, in the document of changes that Chris provided from the PNP, there is some clarification.
You still mentioned an equity performance. How is someone going to do an equity performance?
Right, so that's why there is the idea of soft credits, so that people, like your apprenticeship credits, your assistant fight director credits rather, start to count towards your fight director registry in a small number. And then the same as was the case before, you can assist an equity fight director, and that will get you credits towards being a member on the registry, and also opens the door to becoming an equity member and an equity fight director.
Okay. Good, that's fine. The last thing was about how long should a fight call be? It says right now it's very tight. Big houses sometimes shy away from fight heavy productions because of the restrictions on extra fees and extending the call can create. I don't know if that's true. If somebody said, gee, we'd like to do the 300 charging the light brigade, but we can't afford it because you guys want extra money for a fight call. The fight call is something which members are paid for. And, given the short amount of rehearsal time we have these days, which is also something the directors committee is looking very hard at, how long shows have rehearsals, which is also a wicked sort of catch-22. But in terms of the fight call, if the fight call needs to be extended, that's something that the theater needs to pay for. Equity would be, and this is partly my personal opinion, but having been there for a long time, equity would be very hesitant to give concessions and cutbacks in order to have more time for the fight call by reducing the fees that members get, right? One of the things is, and reasons you are, you get accredited, and also as a fight director you get accredited, is so that's a special skill, so you get more money for that, right? So taking a step backwards is not a good idea. The other reason is, anytime you give a concession on something like that, the producers will say, well, your members were willing to work for this little money here, so we want them to do that on everything, right? So every time you go into a negotiation, every couple of years with them, you're trying to get slight gains. You're trying to get gains to keep up with inflation. You're trying to get gains to move things forward. So moving backwards on those kinds of things is something that they are very hesitant to do. My email address was on there for people to comment or ask questions about that. I didn't hear from anybody, but my email, you're still welcome to ask me any questions about that. And if you have concerns, I'm happy to bring them forward to equity. I will say that because our committee is comprised of people from all four corners of Canada, all over the place. It is difficult for us to meet, and we meet, for short periods of time. And so, you have to be very patient. Equity is a very small organization, and it takes a while to get things done. But it doesn't mean that nothing is happening, that, we're constantly pushing to make things better. So if you have questions along that stuff, please let me know. And if the Academy or somebody wants to talk about things they would like to see done there, or if there's something that I can do to help facilitate that at Equity, I would be very happy to do what I can and give you any advice that I have from my experience there. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, I've seen a couple of hands and questions come up. So I saw Reed had a question quite some time back, and then Richard, I saw your hand, and then Siobhan. So we'll go in that order. Reed, did you still have a question?
Sort of. My question is more on after this meeting, like how can we expect to be updated on these things as they continue to progress? Or are we just going to be like, is it going to be through email, or should we be watching the Facebook group, etc.?
I can answer that since I'm usually in charge of communications. Things of an official nature, P&P updates especially, will generally go out in through our mailing list, which is also cross-posted onto the Facebook group. So it should come through your email, and that should be every active member, not just so that if you have opted out of our newsletter, you should still get official communications. And failing that, if it goes to junk or something, it will also appear on the Facebook group.
Thank you.
Richard, you were next, my friend.
Hello. I'm just wondering if there's any blanket protocol now moving into the possibility of more fight direction and teaching with the whole COVID thing. If that's been discussed, like, is there going to be everybody are to mandatorily wear masks? Do we have to wear face shields? Because I know some people like Christopher Mott and Louisa had to wear some very fun stuff when they were teaching at George Brown. And I'm really curious if there's just some sort of blanket thing that we as instructors should know moving forward.
I mean, I'll jump in on this and say that I feel like it's tough because our organization, as you know, is very vast. And the health situation, it can be very different province to province, right? So I think that the overall recommendation is to follow the designations from your local health chapter and perhaps and then some to your own sensibilities, right? I mean, Chris and I have discovered that even in our very, very strict college setting, apparently there are very different rules between departments. And when we started teaching for 2 different departments, we were like, oh, the rules are very strict in this department and super not in this one. So that was something that we had to negotiate as well. Yeah, I don't think that we as an organization have an official stance on that other than like, please do follow your local health guidances and, maybe also ask yourself what you would like to see. And for me, I also think it's like a collaboration with the students, right? As we all know, like certain parts of safety are objective and there are other parts of safety that are subjective, right? In terms of what people feel. So I think that that kind of communication is useful so that everyone in the room feels that they are protected.
If I can jump in on that too, the protocols on film sets have been changing gradually. The series that I'm on right now, originally, if you were in the zone where actors are, we get tested 3 times a week. We had to wear like complete face masks that way. And we had people who would literally come up with a tape measure if you were too close. Now we've gotten to the point where we can wear glasses similar to this, but they have sort of shields on the top and the side, so we don't have to wear the big shields. But wearing masks, face masks, yeah, like Casey had there, wearing face masks and those kinds of goggles is going to be around for a long time yet, especially with the variants and things like that. There are extremely worried about anybody who goes away, who comes back and goes to meet with an actor. So, you know, we're kind of being told, if you go to a restaurant or you decide to go out to a club, you got to wear your mask, because you cannot risk getting something out there that you then bring into the set and that stuff. So I would say follow those basic guidelines of washing your hands, wearing your mask, and staying at a distance, and also with, you know, wearing goggles. The Delta variant can be picked up with 5 to 15 seconds exposure. So you want to make sure that you're safe and the people around you are safe. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Casey, is what you want to say related to this, or do you want me to come back to you after Siobhan? Okay, great. Go ahead, Casey. Oh, we can't hear you. No, we can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I was going to just speak to the issue of liability. So like, I think a lot of the organizations or schools or theaters you work for will have their own protocols. So you have to be very sure to follow those. But if you have your own insurance, which you should, then come up with your protocols as well and follow them, because I think that's just a good rule of thumb, because we are breathing in each other's faces and spitting and yelling, and that's high risk.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Siobhan, I believe you had a question.
Less a question and something I wanted to mention in conjunction with some of the equity things that are going on and some of that stuff. Just so you know that after we are done with the how to join as an intimacy director directly into equity, similar conversations are slated to be had with regard to joining equity as a fight director with fight director credits, as opposed to kind of what's been happening now is that it's easy to join if you're already an actor and you have actor credits. So I just wanted people to know that that's on the horizon as part of the conversation. And I'm sure that the information will come to you in one form or another as those conversations are happening and continue to be resolved. I wouldn't be surprised if someone said who would like to serve on that committee or on a subcommittee or contribute to a survey. So that's coming.
Does anyone else have any questions? Great. Thank you so much, everybody. That will bring us then to the end of our AGM. Before we can leave, I need someone to motion to adjourn this meeting.
Chris Mott motions to adjourn.
Thank you, Chris. Meeting adjourned at 6:44 p.m. Mountain Time.